Imagine waking up tomorrow and realizing money is no longer something you pursue, it's something pursuing you. Picture opportunities appearing, income flowing, and doors opening, not because you chased them, but because you assumed a state that made wealth inevitable. Your inner state is the true cause of your financial world. When you assume abundance as your identity, the outer world bows to that decision. Wealth becomes your reflection, not your pursuit. Today, you will learn how to embody the assumption that transforms you into a magnet for money. Assuming wealth as a present reality is the moment everything changes, because it dissolves the distance between you and the result you desire. Most people place wealth somewhere in the future, something they hope to achieve, something they work toward, something that may or may not come depending on effort or external conditions. But when you hold wealth as a present identity, not a distant possibility, you activate the creative power within you in its purest form. You shift from the mindset of the seeker to the stance of the one who already possesses. In this shift, the old internal narrative of lack loses all authority. Holding the assumption of present wealth does not require physical evidence, it requires inner recognition. It asks you to accept emotionally and imaginatively that you are already the version of yourself who is financially abundant. This isn't fantasy. It's the rearrangement of your internal state, and your internal state is the only place where creation begins. When you identify as wealthy, your thoughts, reactions, and decisions originate from a sense of completion. You stop asking how long it will take or whether it will happen. You stop negotiating with fear. Instead, you live with an inner certainty that everything you desire is already done. This assumption shifts the entire way you show up in the world. When you believe you lack, you act from urgency, effort, and pressure. When you believe you are already wealthy, you act from clarity, confidence, and intuition. You no longer chase opportunities, you allow them to meet you. You no longer search for approval. You walk with the presence of someone who already owns their financial identity. This difference is subtle but powerful. The world responds not to what you want, but to who you are being. When your inner state broadcasts wealth, the outer world mirrors it. Wealth as a present reality also changes what you permit yourself to receive. Many people unconsciously block money because they still see themselves as the one striving, the one waiting, the one hoping. When you embody the state of already being wealthy, you dissolve the psychological resistance that once kept abundance at a distance. The subconscious mind accepts your new identity, and once it accepts, it must express. Its expression shows up as new ideas you feel compelled to follow, new opportunities that seem to appear out of nowhere, new people drawn to your energy, new solutions that rise in moments of inspiration. These are not coincidences. They are the natural results of your assumption. Living in the assumption of present wealth means waking up each day already feeling financially secure. You walk into rooms with the composure of someone who no longer measures their worth by their bank balance. You speak with the ease of someone whose life is unfolding in alignment with their desires. You make decisions from a higher vantage point, guided by certainty instead of worry. This internal steadiness becomes magnetic. Money gravitates toward those who radiate the energy of having rather than wanting. This assumption also dissolves impatience, because impatience only exists when you believe your desire is separate from you. When wealth becomes your present identity, you stop checking for signs, you stop measuring progress, and you stop questioning timing. You understand that the outer world is simply catching up to the truth you already know. You realize that fulfillment begins internally long before it becomes visible externally. This is why those who assume the end receive their results with ease. They do not interfere with the process by doubting, fearing, or trying to force outcomes. Assuming wealth as a present reality is not about pretending to be rich. It is about embodying the emotional and psychological state of abundance right now. It is about letting the feeling of having guide your day, your choices, and your expectations. It is about walking through life as the version of yourself who has already succeeded. This identity does not need to be earned. It is chosen. And once you choose it, everything in your world begins to shift to support that choice. New income streams appear because you are finally receptive to them. Opportunities arrive because your energy signals readiness. People who can elevate your life are drawn to you because you exude certainty, not desperation. Even challenges transform instead of obstacles. They become stepping stones that fit effortlessly into the unfolding of your financial story. When you hold yourself in the assumption of wealth, you stop waiting for life to prove something to you. You become the proof. You stop looking to circumstances for validation because your certainty is internal, not external. And with that internal certainty, the world begins reshaping itself. Money, clients, ideas, partnerships, and breakthroughs start flowing, not because you force them, but because your state of being demanded their arrival. This is the power of assuming wealth as a present reality. It moves you out of the realm of wishing and into the realm of creation. It dissolves resistance, erases scarcity, and summons abundance with precision. When you decide that wealth is already yours in the unseen, the seen must reflect it. Once the inner world declares the result, the outer world becomes obligated to reveal it. Feel the financial freedom before it arrives by making the inner experience more real than anything your senses report. The feeling is the blueprint. It is the unseen architecture that shapes what will eventually materialize. When you close your eyes and let yourself sink into the emotional atmosphere of already having the money, already living in abundance, already enjoying the relief that comes with security, you initiate the creation process at its source. You move from wishing to possessing, from longing to embodying, and this inner shift becomes the force that instructs your world to catch up. Begin by imagining what life feels like once the financial pressure has dissolved. Not what it looks like, but what it feels like. Imagine waking up without the background noise of stress. Imagine making decisions from clarity rather than fear. Feel the shift in your chest, the loosening of your shoulders, the calm that spreads when you genuinely believe all your needs are met and more is on the way. This is the feeling of arrival. The moment you allow this feeling to settle into your subconscious, you broadcast a new signal that reality must interpret and reflect. Financial freedom is not simply a number in the bank, it is a state of being. It is the sensation of ease, of spaciousness, of inner authority. When you rehearse this state daily, even if for moments at a time, you train your nervous system to accept abundance as normal. You stop vibrating at the frequency of lack and shift into the emotional chemistry of wealth. The world responds to this internal reorganization. People treat you differently, opportunities find their way to you, and ideas come with clarity because you are no longer operating from survival mode. You have stepped into the emotional signature of someone who already has more than enough. Most people try to change their finances by reacting to what they see. They wait for evidence before they allow themselves to feel better. But this approach reverses the natural order. The feeling comes first because the feeling is the cause. When you withhold the emotion of wealth until the outer world justifies it, you trap yourself in the very state that blocks your prosperity. The irony is that the moment you permit yourself to feel wealthy before the evidence arrives, the evidence begins to form. Emotion is the seed from which circumstances grow. You choose the emotion, and reality grows around it. Let yourself feel what it is like to have choices again. Feel the empowerment of paying bills with gratitude instead of tension. Feel the confidence of knowing that money comes to you consistently, easily, and through channels you could not have predicted. Let that feeling become familiar. The more familiar it becomes, the more magnetic it becomes. Your circumstances cannot help but align with what you repeatedly embody within. Picture yourself entering a new chapter in which money no longer controls your mood. You are not reacting to numbers, you are directing them. Feel the relief of that shift. Imagine breathing deeply into a sense of safety. Imagine an inner voice that says, "It is done. I am supported. Money flows to me." Let these statements sink into your emotional body, not as affirmations you fight to believe, but as truths you feel in your bones. When the feeling becomes natural, the outer world responds as if the transformation had occurred physically long before it ever does. This is not fantasy. It is creative command. When you make the feeling of wealth your dominant inner atmosphere, you activate circuits in your mind that generate new opportunities. You notice connections and solutions you previously missed. You behave differently, speak differently, move differently. Your energy communicates on your behalf, and people respond to it without understanding why. You begin attracting outcomes that match the emotional state you inhabit. Think about how you would walk into a room if you already had all the money you desired. How would you speak? How would you negotiate? How would you carry yourself? Let that version of you live inside your imagination until it becomes the only version you recognize. The world is always listening to who you assume you are. When you assume the emotional tone of wealth, you are claiming the identity that makes abundance natural. Feeling the freedom before it arrives is not pretending. Pretending is fragile. It breaks the moment circumstances contradict it. Feeling is power. Feeling creates. Feeling sustains. Feeling anchors the unseen into visibility. So practice the emotional state of financial freedom, not as a temporary escape, but as a daily inner reality you return to again and again. You will know you are doing it correctly when you begin to feel lighter, calmer, and more grounded, even if your bank account has not yet changed. This is the first sign that the shift has begun. The world must eventually reflect what has stabilized within. It has no choice. The inner cause activates outer expression. Feel rich long before the evidence appears. The evidence is simply the echo of the state you have already claimed. Struggle is not something life imposes. It is something the mind rehearses until it becomes familiar. When you see money as difficult, unpredictable, or distant, you create an inner identity that must fight for every dollar. This identity becomes a lens through which you interpret every financial event. You begin expecting challenges, assuming delays, and preparing for disappointment. Without realizing it, you are training your subconscious to uphold a reality where financial ease is impossible. Dropping the identity of struggle is not about ignoring real life obstacles. It is about refusing to make those obstacles part of who you are. The identity of struggle forms subtly. It comes from past experiences, old beliefs, inherited patterns, cultural programming, and emotional memories. Perhaps you grew up hearing that money requires sacrifice, that success demands endless grind, that only a few people get ahead. Perhaps you have accumulated evidence that life is costly, jobs are unstable, opportunities are rare, or success is reserved for others. Over time, these external impressions become internal assumptions. You begin acting from a belief that you must compete, strain, or prove yourself in order to receive anything. This inner posture blocks the natural flow of abundance by insisting that everything must come through effort, tension, or difficulty. To drop this identity, you must first recognize that struggle is not your nature. It is a story you were taught to believe, a narrative you continue to energize, and an image you habitually project onto your circumstances. Money is not inherently difficult. Wealth does not belong to a chosen few. There is no universal law requiring effort to match value. These are human-made limitations that dissolve the moment you stop validating them. When you stop assuming that financial struggle is inevitable, you reclaim the creative power that was always yours. Begin observing your internal dialogue. Notice how often you say or think, "This is hard, I never get ahead, nothing works for me, money always slips away, I can't afford that, things never go smoothly." These statements are not reflections of truth, they are declarations of identity. When repeated, they instruct your subconscious to produce more of the same. To drop the identity of struggle, you must stop feeding these assumptions with emotion and attention. Instead, cultivate inner language that aligns with ease, receiving, and natural flow. Speak from the version of yourself who no longer battles to create progress. Let your words become statements of freedom, not confinement. Dropping the identity of struggle requires shifting how you interpret the world. When something goes wrong financially, do not label it a pattern. Do not decide that it confirms your fears. Instead, detach from it. Let it pass through without assigning meaning. The old identity wants to grip every setback and claim it as evidence of its survival. But the new identity, the one rooted in abundance, treats setbacks as temporary, neutral, and powerless. When you stop personalizing difficulty, difficulty stops defining you. Another step in releasing this identity is allowing yourself to receive without guilt, fear, or justification. Many people believe they must earn every blessing through struggle. They have been conditioned to distrust ease. When money comes unexpectedly, they feel unworthy or suspicious. When opportunities appear effortlessly, they doubt them. This internal conflict pushes abundance away because they subconsciously reject anything that contradicts their struggle identity. Train yourself to welcome ease, welcome unexpected income, welcome opportunities that appear without labor or strain. Every time you receive naturally, you weaken the identity that insists everything must be hard. Your self-concept must evolve. See yourself as someone for whom wealth flows. Imagine being the individual who attracts, not chases, who receives, not strains, who moves through life with a quiet certainty of being supported. When this identity becomes familiar, the world reflects it. You will notice that people respond differently. Circumstances soften. Pathways open, ideas come with clarity, solutions arise faster. Money begins to appear through channels you never considered. The external world mirrors the ease you cultivate internally. Let go of glorifying struggle. Society often romanticizes hardship, perseverance, and hustle culture as if suffering is proof of worthiness. But creation does not respond to suffering, it responds to assumption. The mind that believes struggle is necessary creates conditions that fulfill that belief. The mind that assumes abundance creates conditions that match that assumption. You are not rewarded for effort, you are rewarded for alignment. When you align your inner state with the identity of ease, grace, and receiving, money flows toward you because there is no resistance left in its path. Dropping the identity of struggle is ultimately an act of liberation. It is the decision to no longer define yourself by past scarcity, past failures, or past conditioning. It is the willingness to step into a new internal version of yourself where abundance is natural and struggle is irrelevant. When you embody this identity consistently, when you think from it, respond from it, and feel from it, you rewrite the script of your financial life. Money chases the mind that does not cling to old stories of limitation. Money chases the one who walks in the certainty of inner richness. When you release the identity of the striver and assume the identity of the receiver, you become the magnet. The world reorganizes to support the new truth you hold. Abundance flows to the one who no longer struggles to find it. Make wealth your unshakable normal by dissolving the idea that abundance is something rare, distant, or exceptional. When you elevate wealth to the level of normalcy within your consciousness, you remove the energetic gap between where you are and where you want to be. Most people unconsciously treat wealth as an event, a breakthrough, a lucky occurrence, or a sudden stroke of fortune. They imagine it as something that arrives with fireworks and dramatic circumstances. But when you study the mechanics of inner creation, you realize that the extraordinary only appears in the outer world when it has already been accepted as fully ordinary within the inner world. The moment you normalize wealth and imagination, life begins constructing experiences that match that expectation. Normalcy is the most powerful creative force because it bypasses resistance. You never struggle to maintain the things you consider normal. Your daily routines, your preferences, the way you think, the way you carry yourself, they persist effortlessly because they are built into your identity. When wealth becomes just as familiar and expected as these everyday patterns, you stop chasing it and begin embodying it. An embodiment is the signal that instructs reality to reflect your inner assumption. The world responds not to what you want with desperation, but to what you claim with certainty. To make wealth your normal, begin by noticing how often you treat it as something outside your current self-concept. When you say that wealth is coming someday, or that you hope things will improve, you reinforce separation. You reinforce the idea that abundance is not yet part of who you are. Instead, bring wealth into the present moment of your awareness. Think from the state, not about it. Ask yourself, how does the person who already lives in sustained abundance feel when they wake up? How do they walk, speak, and respond to life? What do they assume about opportunities, solutions, connections, and the flow of money? When you adopt these qualities internally, your external experience cannot remain the same. Wealth as normal does not mean arrogance, extravagance, or irresponsibility. It means certainty. It means stability. It means knowing that your financial well-being is a natural expression of your inner state, not a fragile achievement that can disappear without warning. When wealth is normal, you no longer fear losing it because you are not depending on a circumstance. You are depending on an identity. Identities don't fluctuate, circumstances do. And circumstances always obey identity. Begin to familiarize yourself with the emotions of financial ease. Imagine looking at your bank accounts and experiencing calm, not urgency. Picture yourself handling investments, bills, and purchases with complete inner stability. This is what it means to normalize abundance. You are teaching your subconscious that wealth is not an event to react to, but a baseline to maintain. When this baseline is consistently accepted, your actions, decisions, and perceptions transform automatically. You begin selecting opportunities aligned with prosperity. You become attuned to ideas that generate income. You recognize supportive relationships and dismiss those that contradict your new standard. You carry the posture of someone who expects success because success has become characteristic, not accidental. This internal shift also influences how others respond to you. When wealth is normal within you, people sense it. They treat you differently. They perceive confidence, stability, clarity, traits that naturally attract collaboration, clients, support, and new openings. Opportunities flow to those who project inner abundance because they become magnetic to interactions that match that energy. Money gravitates to individuals who expect it the way others expect a sunrise. Not with drama, but with the quiet assurance that it simply arrives. Normalize wealth by making small but powerful inner adjustments throughout your day. When you catch yourself imagining lack, pause and return to the version of yourself who already has everything handled. When you encounter bills, approach them with the mindset of someone whose income far exceeds their obligations. When you desire something, assume that obtaining it is natural for someone of your internal standard. Over time, these micro moments accumulate, reshaping your entire concept of self. The more you occupy the feeling of abundance, the quieter doubt becomes. Doubt loses oxygen when certainty rises, and certainty rises when the end state becomes familiar, when you have rehearsed it mentally until it feels like the only logical reality. At that point, wealth doesn't feel like a goal. It feels like home. And the world always delivers experiences that match the home you carry inside. When wealth becomes your unshakable normal, you no longer ask whether abundance will show up. You understand that it cannot do anything else. Reality reflects your assumption with precision. If wealth is normal within, it must become normal without. And once you establish that baseline, life aligns itself to support it in ways that seem almost effortless. Wealth is no longer something you earn through strain. It is something that flows to match the identity you have embraced. Persisting in the end is the discipline that separates temporary wishers from conscious creators. The middle, the space between your assumption and its fulfillment, is where most people lose themselves. It is where doubt tries to creep in, where old beliefs attempt to reassert power, and where circumstances may seem unchanged or even appear to worsen. But the middle has no authority of its own. It is only a reflection of yesterday's state. the residue of what you used to believe. When you persist in the end, you refuse to engage with the illusion of delay. You stay loyal to the outcome you have claimed, not the temporary story unfolding in front of you. The middle often looks chaotic because reality is reorganizing itself around your new inner decision. Structures built on your former assumptions begin to fall away. Old patterns collapse. People shift. Opportunities rearrange. Much like a house undergoing renovation, the environment can look broken or misaligned long before the masterpiece takes form. If you judge the process too early, you interfere with it. But if you hold steady and remain centered in the feeling of completion, the very chaos you are tempted to fear becomes the proof that the new reality is forming. Persistence is not effort. It is not fighting circumstances or repeating affirmations with tension. Persistence is quiet inner loyalty to the end. It is the refusal to emotionally return to the person who lacks what you have already claimed. When you persist, you stay mentally located in the world where your wealth is established, stable, and present now. You act from that world. You respond from that world. You interpret life from that world. You no longer check for evidence because the end is already real within you. Your inner state is the cause, and cause does not beg for confirmation. The middle tries to test your allegiance. Unexpected bills might show up. Clients may fall away. Opportunities you counted on may suddenly shift. But these are not signs of failure. They are indicators that the old state is dissolving. When the old dissolves, it often creates temporary noise. Let it. The truth of your end is untouched by the noise of transition. Your assumption of wealth is the seed, and the middle is simply the soil adjusting around it. Stay faithful to the seed, not the soil. To persist is to choose the end again and again, regardless of appearances. This is not denial, it is mastery. You are not ignoring circumstances. You are recognizing their subordinate role. They are the last to change, not the first. Your inner world leads, the outer follows. When you persist, you honor this hierarchy. You stop giving power to doubt and start giving energy to certainty. You stop reacting to the world and begin dictating what the world must reflect. The middle becomes easier when you understand that circumstances are neutral. They are only mirrors of your prior state, not predictors of your future. When an unwelcome situation appears, it is simply an invitation to remain unmoved. Instead of panicking or questioning your assumption, you reaffirm the truth of your end. The person who already has wealth would not be shaken by temporary disruptions. They would remain calm, confident, and internally aligned. Persisting means stepping into that identity now, before the world validates it. As you hold the end with unwavering conviction, life begins to bend in ways you cannot yet see. Ideas surface that were previously invisible. People who seemed irrelevant suddenly play key roles. Opportunities that appeared unavailable shift open. Financial paths unfold with precision. What looked like resistance becomes rearrangement. What seemed like delay becomes preparation. Your task in the middle is simple: maintain the inner state of the fulfilled desire. Return to the feeling of already having the wealth you have claimed. Let that feeling dominate. Let it guide your reactions, your posture, your decisions. When the middle attempts to distract you, gently redirect yourself back into the end. Each return strengthens the assumption. Each moment of loyalty deepens the imprint in your subconscious. And once the subconscious accepts the end as true, the external expression becomes unavoidable. Persistence is power because it maintains the vibration of completion long enough for the world to catch up. Wealth does not arrive because you chased it. It arrives because you stayed aligned with the version of you who already possesses it. You are not manifesting money. You are manifesting the identity that money naturally follows. The middle is merely the timeline in which that identity becomes dominant. Your end is the law. The middle is the journey. When you remain loyal to the end, even as the middle shifts, shakes, and tests you, you step into the role of creator rather than reactor. And the world cannot resist a creator who stands firm in the reality they have chosen. Persist in the end, and the end must reveal itself. When you stop trying to force your way into wealth and instead assume the state of already being financially fulfilled, action stops being something you push and strain to produce. It becomes something that rises within you effortlessly, almost quietly, as if life itself is tapping you on the shoulder and guiding you toward the next step. Inspired action is not about doing more. It is about doing what naturally aligns with the version of you who already has the result. It is precise, efficient, and powerful because it flows from a consciousness that knows the outcome is guaranteed. When you assume wealth as your identity, you shift out of survival mode. You are no longer acting from the frantic energy of trying to fix something or avoid failure. The fear-driven mind takes unnecessary actions, overthinks, doubts, and attempts to control every detail. In that state, action is heavy and ineffective because it comes from a belief in lack. But the individual who is grounded in the assumption of abundance acts from clarity. There is no desperation. There is no urgency. There is simply a calm inner knowing that the right idea, the right opportunity, and the right move will reveal themselves at exactly the right time. This shift in your internal atmosphere changes the type of ideas you receive. You begin to notice thoughts that feel alive, thoughts that expand you, thoughts that excite you, thoughts that seem to pull you forward rather than pressure you. These intuitive impulses are not random. They are the outer expression of your assumed state. Because your consciousness has accepted wealth as a certainty, your mind begins generating actions that match that certainty. You may find yourself drawn to make a call, start a project, reorganize something, invest time into a skill, or reach out to someone you haven't spoken to in years. These impulses feel natural, almost effortless, because they come from the version of you who already knows where the money is. Inspired action is not loud. It rarely arrives as a dramatic command. It is subtle, gentle, and direct. It may appear as a whisper: open that email, try this idea, take this road, look into this opportunity. Even small impulses can hold massive financial consequences because they are connected to the chain of unfolding events leading to your assumption's fulfillment. When your inner state is aligned, you become sensitive to these signals. You don't second guess them the way you would when acting from fear. You trust them because they carry a resonance that feels true. The beauty of inspired action is its efficiency. It removes unnecessary effort from your life. Instead of scattering your energy across activities that lead nowhere, you begin taking fewer but more impactful steps. These actions feel light yet powerful because they come from alignment, not strain. When you no longer force the outcome, you discover that the outcome moves toward you through a series of natural, intuitive steps. It is not your job to figure out every detail. It is your job to embody the end and respond to the impulses that arise from that end. Consider how you behave when you already know success is guaranteed. You do not rush. You do not panic. You do not question every movement. You act with purpose, confidence, and calm certainty. That is the energy from which inspired action emerges. It is the behavior of someone who is walking a path that is already established, not someone trying to carve out a path from scratch. When you assume wealth, life becomes cooperative. People show up at the right moment, resources appear when needed, and opportunities align themselves with your steps. Your actions merge seamlessly with the flow of events that your inner state sets into motion. You may notice that ideas come to you with a sense of timing. Something you ignored last year suddenly feels relevant. A plan that once felt complicated now seems simple. A concept you dismissed before now sparks excitement. This is not coincidence, it is alignment. Your consciousness prepares the outer world to respond to you, and your impulses guide you to interact with it in the most effective way possible. You are not chasing results. You are tuning into the movements that bring the results to you. Inspired action also carries a feeling of inevitability. When the impulse arises, it feels almost obvious. You may think, of course, this is the next step. Of course, this opportunity is mine. This sense of knowing is a sign that your inner and outer worlds have synchronized. You are not guessing, you are remembering. You are stepping into what has already been prepared in the unseen. The more you live from this state, the more you realize that wealth creation is not a matter of intense effort, but of clear alignment. It is about listening rather than forcing, receiving rather than demanding, allowing rather than pushing. When you trust that your assumption is already fulfilled, you no longer need to manipulate circumstances. You simply act from the perspective of the person who already has what they desire. And from that perspective, action flows naturally, powerfully, and effectively. Inspired action turns you into a participant in your own manifestation rather than a laborer trying to make things happen. You become an instrument of your inner state, responding to its guidance with confidence. Every step you take amplifies the momentum of your assumption. Every move you make becomes a confirmation that wealth is not coming from the outside, it is coming through you. In this way, your actions begin to carry extraordinary impact because they are backed by certainty, clarity, and the power of a fulfilled state. Not only do you do less, but what you do produces more. This is the essence of allowing inspired action to arise naturally. The alignment of inner certainty with outer movement, the merging of intuition and opportunity, and the effortless flow that makes wealth not something you chase, but something drawn to your very presence. Watch for the subtle changes that begin to ripple through your world, because these are the earliest signals that your inner assumption has taken root. Manifestation rarely begins with thunder, it begins with whispers. A small financial win, a casual conversation with someone who later becomes a key connector, an idea that arrives fully formed in the middle of your normal day. These are not coincidences. They are the first confirmations that your inner shift is active, and your assumption is now moving into expression. When you change states, life must respond. It cannot remain neutral. The external world begins to bend, reorganize, and align itself with the version of you that you have chosen to embody. The challenge for most people is not that the signs are missing, it is that they overlook them. They expect the final result to appear immediately, not realizing that manifestation unfolds through a bridge of events that starts long before the end becomes visible. The signs are the bridge beginning to form beneath your feet. When you see an unexpected discount, a sudden refund, or money showing up from a place you never considered, it is easy to dismiss it as luck. But these are not random occurrences. They are fingerprints of your new state appearing in your world. Every shift, no matter how small, is the universe signaling the assumption has been accepted. The wheels are turning, the end is inevitable. You must cultivate sensitivity to these signs. Not desperation, not obsession, but awareness. The individual who lives in the end recognizes that the earliest indicators are just as meaningful as the final outcome. They do not ask if the manifestation is coming, they observe how it is coming. When new people enter your life, especially those aligned with your goals, take notice. When your intuition suddenly guides you toward a new idea, understand that this is not a random thought. When you receive an opportunity that feels unusually timed, see it as part of the unfolding momentum you have initiated. The signs are often subtle because they are tailored to your personal path. One person may experience a dramatic financial breakthrough. Another may receive a quiet opportunity that leads to transformation over time. Alignment does not always roar, sometimes it hums. But it is always there, and it always begins the moment your inner assumption stabilizes. Think of these signs as early harvests of the seed you planted. They may be small in comparison to the full crop, but they are undeniable evidence that the soil has accepted the seed and growth is underway. Celebrate every sign, no matter how small. Celebration amplifies the assumption because it reinforces your awareness that the manifestation is already progressing. When you acknowledge the signs, you deepen your conviction. When you deepen your conviction, the unfolding accelerates. Gratitude becomes a multiplier, not because it pleases some external force, but because it locks your consciousness into the frequency of receiving. When you feel the thrill of alignment, You stay in the state that created it. This is how money begins to chase you, because your sustained recognition keeps the channels open and flowing. There is a powerful psychological shift that occurs when you start noticing these signs. Your relationship with money transforms. Instead of viewing wealth as something distant that requires force or struggle, you begin to see it as something increasingly present, responsive, and connected to your inner world. You witness proof that your assumption is influencing reality. This dissolves doubt, and when doubt dissolves, resistance collapses. Resistance is the only barrier between you and the fulfillment of your desire. When the signs begin appearing, they are showing you that resistance has weakened and alignment has strengthened. You are no longer trying to create the outcome. You are allowing the outcome to express itself. It is essential to avoid dismissing the signs as insignificant or unrelated. The mind conditioned by scarcity will always attempt to minimize small blessings, viewing them as too little or irrelevant. But the mind aligned with abundance understands that every sign is a message, a confirmation, a thread connected to the final tapestry. When you ignore these signs, you interrupt the energetic flow. When you acknowledge them, you reinforce the path. You must treat each sign as a stepping stone deliberately placed for you by your own assumption. Unexpected income is one of the most common signs. It might show up as a gift, a rebate, a bonus, or money found in a place you did not expect. But do not limit the signs to financial ones alone. New relationships, new insights, new opportunities, shifts in mood, increased confidence, and sudden clarity are all part of the evidence. The outer world rearranges itself in countless ways to move you toward the fulfillment of your desire. Alignment is not just about money showing up, it is about the entire environment adjusting to support your chosen identity. As these signs appear, maintain your inner stillness. Do not chase them. Do not analyze them endlessly. Simply recognize them as confirmations and continue living in the state of the fulfilled desire. When a sign appears, smile inwardly and say, "Of course." This response signals that you are not surprised or desperate. You are aligned. You are living from the end, and the signs are merely the natural echoes of that inner alignment. The more you expect alignment, the more alignment shows up. The more you trust the unfolding, the more elegantly it unfolds. When you walk through life with the quiet certainty that money is already moving toward you, the signs become unmistakable. They gather, they intensify, and eventually they culminate in the physical manifestation that matches your assumption. The signs are not the result, they are the reassurance that the result is guaranteed. Live from completion daily, not occasionally, not when you are meditating, not when you are visualizing, but throughout your entire waking and resting life. Completion means you no longer entertain the version of yourself who is striving, hoping, or waiting for money to arrive. Instead, you embody the one who already possesses everything desired. This shift is not about pretending or forcing. It is about occupying the only state that produces effortless manifestation, the state of being the person who has already arrived at the destination. When you live from completion, your inner dialogue changes. You stop asking when things will happen because in your world they already have. You stop worrying about the how, because the version of you who already has the wealth does not worry. You stop questioning your worthiness because the successful version of yourself considers wealth a natural extension of your identity. This inner shift alters the tone and direction of every thought. It creates a mental atmosphere of certainty, stability, and expectation, an atmosphere that money responds to with absolute precision. Walking through the day from completion means that your reactions transform. When a bill shows up, you respond as someone who has more than enough. When an opportunity appears, you respond as someone who is used to receiving opportunities. When challenges arise, you meet them with the composure of a person who has already succeeded. You are not pretending to be calm. You are calm because you know the end is secure. You know that everything is unfolding to support your established assumption. Completion gives you the emotional resilience of someone who already knows the outcome. Completion is not a feeling you chase. It is a place you choose to live. It becomes the mental home you return to automatically. When doubts attempt to enter, you reject them not through force but through authority. They do not belong in the home of abundance. You begin to treat doubt the way a wealthy person treats scarcity, as irrelevant noise. Your internal state becomes guarded, stable, unwavering. And because your mind is settled, life flows to match that settled state. Allow this version of you, the completed you, to guide every decision. Think the thoughts they would think. Behave as they would behave. Carry yourself with the posture, composure, clarity, and confidence of someone who has already achieved financial ease. This does not mean reckless spending or forced bravado. It means the quiet assurance that you are supported, supplied, and sourced from within. You begin to take actions that align with the identity of abundance, actions that are thoughtful, intuitive, and empowered. Your choices rise to the level of the person you have already become. Living from completion dissolves all desperation. Desperation belongs to the state of lack, and you no longer live there. You no longer beg for signs. You no longer race for proof. The completed version of you is not in search of evidence. They are the evidence. They move with certainty because wealth expresses itself through them naturally. Instead of trying to get something, you allow what is already yours internally to mirror itself externally. That is the essence of creation. The outer must reflect the inner. When completion becomes your dwelling place, subtle but powerful changes occur around you. People respond to you with more respect and interest. Opportunities appear without strain. New financial pathways open. Solutions arise without forcing. You begin to notice synchronicities, alignments, and unexpected movements in your favor. These are not coincidences. They are the natural consequences of assuming the identity of completion. Wealth is simply catching up to the state you are living in. Completion is the state of the person who knows the result is guaranteed. They do not hope for abundance. They are abundance in motion. They do not chase money. Money is drawn to them because their inner certainty emits a magnetic quality. Wealth gravitates toward clarity. It gravitates toward confidence. It gravitates toward the individual who no longer contradicts their desire with fear, doubt, or hesitation. When you are internally complete, the world rushes to organize itself around your conviction. Carry this state into every part of your day. When you wake up as the person who already has financial ease. When you walk with the calm authority of someone who is already established. When you speak from the identity of abundance. When you plan from the position of someone whose success is a settled fact. When you go to sleep, drift into the feeling of having already lived a day in the life of the prosperous version of yourself. Do this consistently, sincerely, and wholeheartedly, and wealth will begin to behave differently around you. It will stop appearing as something distant and start appearing as something inevitable. Completion removes all resistance, dissolves all delays, and eliminates all struggle. It makes wealth follow you not because you chase it, but because your state demands it. Live from completion daily. Make it your home, your baseline, your unquestioned normal. When you occupy that state fully, wealth does not approach slowly, it arrives with certainty. It becomes your shadow, your companion, your natural expression. It follows you effortlessly because you have become the version of yourself that it is designed to follow. Close your eyes for a moment and feel the truth of this. Money does not respond to effort. It responds to identity. Assume abundance, and abundance will find you everywhere you go. If you are ready for the life where money chases you instead of the other way around, hold this assumption today. Live in it, breathe it, claim it. Your new financial reality begins with a single decision. Assume the end and watch wealth run toward you.